Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. I am super excited to introduce this new series called What's It Like to you today. The reason behind this series is to highlight the experiences other people have with our children. I think very often we're so entrenched in our daily lives on this journey that we forget this journey has a village, and our child's village has to watch as we struggle or process or grieve or rejoice, really. But I think we forget that the amazing people in our child's village also have their own joys and their own struggles and challenges and magic. So today we are kicking off What's It Like to honor those experiences. Today's episode, just be prepared because I cry quite a few times. I actually cried while editing it. There's a lot of laughter too, but be aware that Diane and I get into some pretty heavy but really, really honest conversations. We talk about the devastation she experienced when hearing Teal's diagnosis. We talk about the envy and the anger. We discuss the honest kid questions at playgrounds. And I also open up about how my preconceived notions about special needs needed to be dramatically reevaluated. So please don't send me hate mail for being really, really raw. Sometimes we have hidden truths that we don't even know we think, and those need to be completely reworked so the true joy can be exposed. We do have a few audio issues, so bear with us, but all in all, this is a really vulnerable interview. So please be gentle with me as you listen, but I do hope you enjoy. Diane Ernst began working as a nurse's aide in a small town hospital in Iowa when she was just 12 years old. She needed to do her part to help support her farming family. Her father was ill for the majority of her teenage years and passed away when Diane was in high school. His death profoundly impacted her view on the world, and as a result, she enrolled in nursing school at the University of Iowa. After graduating as one of the first nurse practitioners in Iowa, she worked in labor and delivery, surgery, general family practice, and eventually specialized in pediatric dermatology. After more than 30 years, she left this practice and dedicated her time to hospice, where she managed the care for pediatric patients and emotionally supported their families for more than 9 years. I'm honored to introduce you to Diane Ernst, who is Teal's grandma and my mom.
I'm thrilled that you took some time to do this, and it was like pulling teeth. She's asked for hard alcohol a couple of times. She's threatened to not do it. So anywho, and it's only taken us like 4 hours to get her connected on the audio. So welcome to the show, Diane. So tell me a little bit about how important being a nurse is to you.
Being a nurse was who I was. When I started working as a nurse's aide, I had some fabulous mentors that saw that I was comfortable and was a good listener, which being a nurse, that's very important. And so it, I think, fulfilled a need for me as much as I fulfilled maybe some other people's needs. My favorite job still was either labor and delivery or pediatric hospice. And most people think I'm slightly crazy for saying that, but I formed tremendous connections with those families, still have some connections with those families, and really treasure them. It's like becoming a part of their family. And I guess it was who I was. It was hard to leave my pediatric practice because I was close to those kids, but it was time, and it was time for someone else to take over.
So being a nurse was absolutely who you were. It's who you were to me as a child growing up, and you still are the one that we call All of us,
Yeah.
whether, okay, this is what I'm seeing with Teal, or this is what's on my face, or this is what's going on. And, you still are the person. I know you've always said every family needs to have one medical professional in the family, and it's true. So I do really love that. You were a huge part of the community in terms of a lot of my friends and a lot of my classmates in school saw you and trusted you to be their advocate and to, I don't know, just be that person for them. And I know it did hurt everyone or shocked everyone when you went into hospice. However, I think that's when you were always kind of on the religious path. I was raised going to church every Sunday with you and Dad. Was raised as a Lutheran. But I think when you started doing hospice is when you kind of started shifting into more of that spiritual aspect, because you weren't just working with little kids. You were also working with adults that could say, yeah, my mom just showed up in the corner of my room, or things like that. So will you kind of explain how that transition from maybe religion into spirituality was affected by hospice?
Well, first of all, I think it was exposure. I managed 2 hospice teams in addition to having pediatric patients. And so I was exposed to a lot of adults also. They were other nurses' patients, but I would be on call for them or whatever I needed to do. And so I was exposed to a lot of the other world religions, Judaism, Buddhism. I had a Hindu or two. And I think that exposure revealed to me that there's not one right way, that there's many ways to get to the same destination, which we all hope is a happy, better place. And so as a result of that, I not only learned a tremendous amount, but I also became more spiritual rather than religious. And so going to church services became less important to me as just being aware of the world and the universe and nature. And I became a much more whole person, I think, a holistic person, and became more valuable to my patients because of that, because I didn't see just one path.
And you became more valuable to me as well, because I started challenging things. I started wondering why. I started asking some of those questions. And instead of just forcing me down the road of, well, this is what the Bible says, or this is what we've learned, you were very much, open to letting me challenge some of that stuff. So the reason I think that's relevant is because when you flash forward now to us having this child in our family that is one of the most spiritual beings I've ever met. Her name is Teal. Now that it's kind of like all of that prepared us for her.
I think that's true.
Let's transition a little bit into Teal coming into our world. Before the diagnosis, what was that like for you, the first granddaughter?
Having my first granddaughter?
Yeah, and you better say it's like amazing.
Yeah, I have 3 grandsons, all of who are considerably older. And so just to have a baby again in the family was so exciting. I was blown away when Alex called and said, we're having a baby. I think it was 32. She was 32 weeks pregnant, Jen was. And everything had been kind of prearranged, so my bag was already packed. And I think I was there before she was 12 hours old, maybe. Of course, she was in NICU. Alex had actually called during our trip down to the airport, because it takes a couple hours, and said, "It's a girl. We have a girl." And I think he was so excited because, as Jen has probably shared with you, we have a kind of a tradition of genetically very strong women that we come from. And so I definitely saw Teal as a continuation of that. And then, of course, when you see this little twerp who is stunningly beautiful at 32 weeks with the biggest eyes. I mean, I've seen a lot of premature infants, and there was something really special and I don't know, maybe it was spiritual already. It was totally overwhelming. I had my granddaughter.
Yeah, I'm totally crying. I remember that moment. You were the first person outside of Alex and me and to see Teal.
I
Uh,
know,
and we
as I
held
should have been.
no, but we held off a lot of our friends too who were there. So she was 2 pounds, just for everyone to kind of understand why mom was, I think, so shocked how pretty she was, is because we had been expecting this little old man looking wrinkly or this like little baby bird. And, that's what the doctors had prepped us for. So the fact that she did just have this beautiful demeanor already at 2 pounds was pretty profound. And you weren't the only person that was profoundly affected by her right off the bat.
And quite honestly, I remember the first time she actually had her eyes open. Maybe she was back in the isolette, and I was kind of standing looking at her, and I remember tipping my head so that I could actually be eye to eye with her. And whew, there was something. I mean, she was like in my soul immediately. It was I've never experienced that before with anybody or any baby for sure.
To kind of go back to what you said about we have this long line of genetically strong women, we also have this long line of extremely connected women.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how your grandma and you and your mom and me and all of that. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think it does really drive home the fact of this baby profoundly impacted you, but not just from a, oh, she's my granddaughter perspective.
I think part of the connection was that it was so easy to be connected to my grandmother because my grandmother was my mom's best friend. So consequently, she and my grandmother and I became very close. And part of that too was my dad was ill when he was 37. In those 5 years before he died, my grandparents stayed with us because my mom had to travel 2 hours to be in the hospital when my dad had one of his 13 surgeries or whatever. And so I became even closer to my grandmother and benefited greatly from her knowledge and her wisdom. And then, of course, my mom depended on my grandmother tremendously for her strength. And as all of us, with 5 of us at home, depended on my mom. And so when you lose one parent when you're barely 16, then I think I became even more attached to my mom. And she, of course, became my best friend and was wise and handled everything with such grace. I don't think any of us knew we were truly poor because she was so strong. And then when Jen was born, I think I probably experienced the same feeling of, oh my God, it's a girl. I mean, we had all grandsons before her, and boys are very prominent in our family. So nobody expected a daughter, including me. And so I remember the first time they put her in my arms right after she was delivered and I had that same feeling looking at Jen's face as I did kind of with Teal, although Teal was a bit more Teal was a bit more direct, but Jen definitely had that same I see you feeling. That I got that feeling from Jen is I see you. And I think that's what Teal has, is that ability to say to you without saying a word, I see you for who you really are. You can be real with me. And so Jen and my mom became very close. Uh, and my mom went through some tough times with her health at the very end. And so it was really special that they had become close. And Jen actually invited my mom out to San Francisco and they spent a few days together. And my mom talked about that for all of her life, that, my granddaughter, Jen, flew me to California and I got to stay with her for a while. So those are special memories, I hope for Jen, but really for me too.
I didn't want to cry.
Oh no. Not
uh,
loud, not loud, no crying allowed.
um, yeah, I think kind of what you were trying to weave through there is that this has just always been this mother-daughter, but grandmother, granddaughter. And it's a very unique thing. And I've talked about it a little bit, but not a ton. We have a very, very unique line of incredibly connected people, but are women. And not to say anything bad about my dad or my brother, but we just have had a very, very connected relationship. So for me to then hear you say that Teal looked at you and said, I see you, right off the bat, that means a lot.
I have to tell you a funny story about my grandmother. Maybe I can stop Jen from crying here. Um, when she was, talk about a strong woman, my grandfather, of course, was out farming with horses. They were born in the 1880s or 90s, I think we decided. But my grandmother, one of her sons climbed a fence and got in with a mother sow and all of her baby pigs. And of course, he thought the pigs were cute. So he picked one up and the baby pig immediately starts screaming. And my grandmother must have heard the screaming and runs to the hog pen. Now, this is like a 5-foot fence, maybe vaulted the fence, knowing her, grabbed her son, my oldest uncle, and literally threw him over the fence to get him away from the sow, and then turned around and absolutely challenged the sow to ever try to get to one of her children again. And my mom kind of did the same thing on the farm with a bull. It's just funny stories. I miss them all terribly.
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm wondering what fence you hopped over for me.
Yeah. Just wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you definitely have hopped over a lot of fences for me. So part of that is just you being really open to who I am and who Teal is and how much we've challenged you to think differently about how our world is. And to really open. I know Teal has asked me to open up, but I know she's asked you to open up and really look at things and honor who she is spiritually. So let's go to diagnosis. So you were in the room with us when we were meeting with the neurologists. And even though we don't talk about Teal's actual diagnosis, it is something that has a weight to it. And anytime you hear your child has a special need or will not live perhaps the life that you had envisioned for them, it might not be the life that you envisioned, but it can be a better life. I do want to make sure that I say that, because even though the life that Teal's living right now isn't what Alex and I had planned for her, it's far grander. So, but that's not how we thought about it when she was 16 months old. That's not what we felt. And we felt very devastated. And I know as a grandmother, you had one perspective, and then as a nurse practitioner, you probably had another perspective. And so I'd love for you to comment on that. And the reason I want you to do that is because, yeah, deep breath, is grandma has one perspective, the I will jump over a fence for you. And then you also have that perspective of nurse and medical and how do we handle this? So talk about that for everyone.
Well, it's a hard division. It's always been difficult for me to separate whether I was a mother and a nurse practitioner or whether I was a grandmother nurse practitioner, because I'm not sure you can separate them. I think they're so intermingled that it's impossible. I remember sitting, well, let me back up a little bit. I knew that Teal was having some delays pretty early on. She wasn't doing some of the things that I would, in my professional opinion, I knew she was delayed. I was a little miffed at the pediatrician you saw, because I think a referral earlier to a pediatric neurologist probably would have been helpful to Teal, but it was what it was. And I remember sitting there and hearing the words, and the nurse practitioner part of me said, yeah, that's pretty much what I suspected. And the grandmother in me felt the knife go in my ribs, because I knew that not so much that it was a disappointment as it was a new challenge. Mm-hmm. And I didn't ever, and I will never see Teal's life as a disappointment. I see it as a gift to us and a real challenge to us. And I think any of you who know Jen know that she loves nothing more than a challenge. Um,
Within
and
reason.
I'm not sure that's why Teal chose her, but she couldn't have made a better choice, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And so it was really hard. I remember the drive back from San Francisco was extremely quiet. I know that we were all in our own little worlds thinking, okay, what does this mean for us? What direction do we take now? What's the best advice from my perspective I can give them if they ask? And so it was hard, but never ever a disappointment, because I knew somewhere in this little child, even at that age, there was something incredibly unique about her. And she was so darn joyful. It didn't make any difference to her what we attempted to label her with.
Yeah.
So it was devastating on one hand, and we were handed a gift on the other.
Yeah. And I think that phrase of we were handed a gift on the other, that didn't just happen right away. It took me, I guess, a little bit longer, after diagnosis to then say, okay, this is where we're at. And look at all the opportunities that it now presents for us in terms of opening our eyes and having more compassion and being more empathic and loving everyone the same way. You don't even realize that. At least one thing that I learned, and we've never talked about this, I don't think. I had a preconceived notion of what a child with special needs would be. And I'm sad to say that intellectually, that was my first fear was, oh, she has special needs. Is she not smart? And that is that is devastating for me to admit. And yet it was a truth that I had to really deal with, is why did I think a child with special needs equated to less intelligence? I am really disappointed in myself to admit that. And yet I think it's incredibly important to figure out all of the truths that you think you have and that you've taught yourself over a lifetime, and then sit and journal and meditate and dive into it and realize, like, what was that? Why did I equate intelligence and special needs? Like, why did I think it was equivalent? And it's not. I mean, it's not. These children are, I mean, I will write that book someday called My Daughter, My 5-year-old is Smarter Than Me, because Teal is smarter than me. And intellectually, she is all very bright. She gets very bored and doesn't want to prove herself, doesn't want to answer the questions. I know that about her intellectually. She's over it when it comes to what color is this? What word is this, etc. So, but it's a different type of intelligence. She's bright as a whip, but whips are not bright. She's bright as a light bulb. I don't know. Just bright as a light bulb. But spiritually, emotionally, all of that, she is beyond intelligent. And so I think you saying, oh, it was a gift, I wasn't there right away. And it took me a long time.
I don't think I thought that right away. I mean, I was the devastation as a grandmother was more for you and Alex than it was for Teal. Somehow I knew Teal would be okay. And we just didn't understand that it was beyond okay that she was going to be. But I was devastated for you guys because you're so physically active and you're so involved in so many people's lives in so many ways. And so for me, at first, it was, will she ever be able to ride a bike with you guys on the paths? Will she be able to hike like you love to do back into the backcountry? And so, that all flew through my mind. But I think it became so clear so quickly. And, I'm at that point, I was seeing her about every 6 weeks. And it was so evident in that 6-week gap that I probably saw more clearly than you did, because I had that gap time to see where she was doing things or seeing things, showing us things that she hadn't shown 6 weeks ago. And so when you said I didn't think she was smart, I don't think I ever had that feeling, because we already knew that she saw us. Just as an example, I was yakking at her one day, and I was, I don't know, I was repeating words, and you think, okay, this child isn't saying a lot of words, so we'll just practice words and I'll keep with her. And I got the strongest, overwhelming feeling of, Grandma, Di, you don't have to talk all the time. And it was definitely from Teal. And so it was definitely a message to me. The other really funny thing she did recently was, I picked her up from school one day, and she was in the car seat behind me, and she is just chattering away in her wonderful little voice, and it was inflection, and I could tell she was really trying to tell me something. I looked in the mirror and I said, Teal, I am so sorry. I don't understand what you're saying. And she did this little hands out movement, like, well, that's your problem, not mine. I'm telling you what you need to know. You asked the question, here's the answer. And it just made me laugh. I was glad I was at a stoplight, because I probably would have driven off the road. But she communicates very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny, because I remember when you came out, you were in the steam room with her, and you came out and your face was kind of white. And I was like, what? And you said, okay, I get it. Teal's telepathic. She just told me basically to stop talking so much. And it was the
Yeah.
first time that she had sent you what I call that little energy packet of, you don't really hear it in your head, but it comes from her. And it's this feeling that she tells. I mean, you just knew it. It wasn't a question of, oh, who sent me that message? It was, oh, that came directly from Teal. So yeah, pretty cool. And I do want to make sure I go back. It's not that I didn't think she was smart. I was worried that, because I
Yeah.
knew I knew she was smart. I knew she was smart. So then when I heard that diagnosis, and I'm so ashamed of how I associated intelligence with special needs, and I'm very disappointed in that. But it is the truth, and I think it's okay to talk about the truth.
I think when we hear special needs, my mind immediately goes to special ed. And that's not a connection that we need to make. That's definitely not where these special needs kids are. Um, I'm speaking just from Teal's perspective, because Teal is way beyond where most of us are in understanding the world, and it's it's definitely a connection that people make, and I know that as a grandmother, because when people say, you have a granddaughter, what grade is she in? Well, she was in kindergarten, and they'll ask other questions about, well, what does she love to do? Then they'll say, well, my granddaughter is 5 and she rides her bike by herself and blah, blah, blah. And so there's a moment there of a little bit, maybe a twinge of envy, but also a feeling of, damn it, why can't Teal have done that? And so I can't say that I just accept without some envy or anger when people talk about their other grandchildren. However, most of those people have had the opportunity to meet Teal, and the minute they meet her, they get it. It's like, it isn't important if she's walking or running or riding a bike. She's got something else, and people will come up to me after they meet her and go, whoa, that those eyes, I mean, they just see right through you, don't they? And so I think that special needs, special education is something we connect, and it's not right.
I like how you were so honest about being a little envious. I remember the first time I heard some parents at the Discovery Museum comparing at the age of 2 how many words their child spoke. And they're like, oh, it's only 18 words. And we're really worried. And I wanted to just be like, You have no idea. I'd give anything to hear her say mom, and one word, right? And so there is that envy. There is the heartbreaking. And I know I'm speaking to so many people that can relate to that. I hope that you know that I would never change my life with Teal ever. She's beyond amazing, incredible, profound, magical, spiritual, all of that. And yet I do have that part of me at night that goes to bed and thinks, damn it all, I wish that she was running with her friends in the park. I wish she could keep up with them. And so I love it that you said that, because it is really true. That envious, that anger sometimes. And some of this is creating a community on this podcast, is to say it's okay. It's not all peaches and cream. I say in the beginning, it's the magic and the mess. It is messy. It is hard sometimes. And it's okay to be weak.
It's okay to be honest about what we're feeling, because if we suppress those feelings, then they're going to come out in a different way, and that doesn't help any of us. And so I think that Teal senses without a doubt when we have those moments of, oh, Teal, I wish you could do that. But she has such joy and shows such joy watching her friends tear around and play, and they include her so totally because of who she is. Can I tell that little story about Tanner, her friend? I was sitting with Teal waiting for Jen somewhere a couple of days ago, and this little guy came up and he said, I'm Teal's friend. I'm Teal's friend. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, I was in her class at school. And I said, okay. And he said, and are you her grandma? And I said, I am. My name's Diane. What's your name? And he said, I'm Tanner. He was so interactive with her. And to his credit, as most of the kids credit, they treat her like, I don't want to use the normal word, but a kid without any problems at all, without any special needs. They just interact with her. Now, they might go chase a ball down if she misses the ball, but I love the way the kids just are so much more comfortable with her than most adults when you first meet an adult with Teal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I want to do a what's it like to be Teal's friend. Like what's it like to be her grandmother, but what's it like to be Teal's friend? I want to get little snippets from these kids, because I completely agree with you. They don't see it. They don't. I mean, now as she's getting a little older, I know they're starting to notice. They did say at the lunchroom, like, why does she have to wear a bib? They do ask those questions. Or why do you have to help her eat? Why does she need you, like her aide? Why does she need you? Why can't she just feed herself? I mean, they're real questions. They're honest questions from little kids. And, part of me, it breaks my heart. And yet part of it, it's honest. And I encourage kids to ask those questions. When we go to the park, oftentimes it's really hard for me to take her to the park. I guess it's just this overwhelming in your face of how she isn't like physically like all the other kids. And they will ask questions, and they will stare, and they will walk over and say, why isn't she walking? Why are you up here on the jungle gym with her? Because I'm the mom on the jungle gym, literally, like sliding through the slides, crawling through the tunnels, like getting her where she should be with all of her other kids and helping her get up there. And the kids they're like, well, why can't she just do it on her own? Or why is she wearing those braces? And the moms freak out, or the dads freak out. No, it's okay. And I always look at them and the kids, and I say, it's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to be curious. Teal is just like you. She just isn't walking yet. She's just like you. She just isn't talking yet.
Well, and kids ask the questions that we all think, but we have a filter. Well, hopefully we have some type of filter
some
that
of us have a filter.
Stops us from asking those obvious questions, because we all have them, but kids are just like, well, I'm going to find out about this, and I'm just going to ask, and that's okay. And Teal doesn't have any trouble with those questions. She understands what they're asking, and she just smiles at them gives them that great look. And
Yeah.
but I understand that, because it is hard. I've taken her to the park, and it is hard when she has to be in a different swing than another kid who can pump the swing by themselves. Or it is hard, and there's times that I'm just sad, and I look at her and I have moments of just being sad for her, and then I see such joy in her face and her being. And maybe she communicates with me and I'm just not quite hearing it as, it's okay, I'm fine, I'm
Mm-hmm.
good, I love my life.
She does. And I would imagine that most of these people, of these parents and moms and dads and caregivers and grandparents and whomever's listening, feel the exact same thing. There's that balance of, I feel sad, and yet that child is not sad. Teal
No,
is
not at all.
joyful. And most of these magical, beautiful children, yes, while they may struggle and while they may have to have chemo or they may have to have surgeries or whatever, these children are magical. They're way beyond us. They're way beyond us. I'm glad that you let me sucker you into being on this in this conversation, because I think you've said so many things that resonate, and maybe things that I haven't said out loud before that you brought out. And I think that's hugely beneficial for us to be that beautiful, honest, weak, sad,
I think,
happy
yeah,
person.
yeah. I think you and I have these conversations in the car a lot, but to put a mic in front of me is like, I don't know enough to tell them that stuff. I'm just a grandma, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, but what's it like being a grandma to a child with special needs? You just articulated it beautifully. So I appreciate it.
What I hope is that people listening can understand that whether it happens now or down the road for them, that I think you have to accept that there are probably stages that you go through. The first one is maybe shock. And this kind of just popped into my head, so I'm just kind of rambling. But I think there's some shock with, oh, wait a minute, things aren't quite right here. And then I think there was definitely a grieving period. I think we grieved that our dreams of what we pictured as her perfect life probably went out the window. But we forgot to include her in that decision, because she doesn't have any grieving. She loves her life. She loves you and her daddy, and she loves me, and she loves animals and other people. And so I think that you have to accept that grieving, and then you work through the grieving into acceptance of, okay, we're all right here. Let's go ahead and move forward with a plan. And you and Alex have just done an incredible job, truly. And I'm saying this as a medical professional, not as your mother, prejudiced mother, but you have truly explored every possible way to help Teal go through her perfect life with the joy that she shows. Amen.
No, I mean, that's partly why we started the podcast, right? Is to share some of the things that we've explored. But as you were saying that, there are so many other things that we haven't explored that I am going to start getting more onto I have no idea what this is. So let's interview the experts and see if it's something that we would even consider for Teal. All of us, there's so much that we haven't explored. So I love it that you think we've done everything, but man, Mom, we have not. and one thing that I have tried to do, because there are so many possibilities, is I do try to listen to her. I do try to follow her lead.
Well, and to your credit, you aren't satisfied with not giving her the opportunities to make those decisions, because she does make them.
Yeah.
And so for you to say, I'm going to continue to explore, that makes me very happy.
Thanks. We do have a final question that we always ask our guests, and that is, what is one word that you would use to describe a child with special needs?
Oh, joyful just pops into my head. I had several patients with special needs. Some were nonverbal. And I can say that looking back now, I think they have joy within them that just radiates out and affects all of us. It's like a ripple in a pond because their joy is so contagious, and they make us laugh and they make us happy, but joyful is definitely the word I would use.
That's a good one. I agree. I truly appreciate you taking time, Mom. And I know that people are going to be really profoundly affected by our conversation. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.